puts Kentucky back on the field, and then Ray Davis, all day Ray. Man, oh man, is Davis doing it up.
This is Tootin taking it to his left, got a seam. Facial Tootin on the move, got some alleys out there. Beep, touchdown!
Back shoulder throw, he's got it. It's Tez Johnson. Colin Johnson, touchdown!
Is their defense. Little hole there to the right side, first down and then some. Jeremiah Love, touchdown Notre Dame.
It's Williams in motion, low snap, Melrose stopped. Michigan makes a stand and comes up with a milestone playoff victory.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Week Zero podcast. I am your host tonight because Connor is at the airport. Ryan, and we got our boy Lucas and Connor. What the fuck is Virginia Tech? VT Newsman. We're going to be here to break down the first round matchups that happened this past weekend, as well as look ahead to the quarterfinal matchups, and on New Year's. So, boys, how are you doing? What are your guys' thoughts on the games this past weekend?
Good. Just watched a whole lot of
interesting thoughts on the games.
Power Five versus,
it's hilarious seeing the mighty SEC team get destroyed worse than SMU and Indiana. That was funny.
Yeah, that is hilarious. What were you gonna say, Lucas?
Watching a whole lot of Power Five versus FCS schools this weekend was a lot of fun.
Need a receipt, man?
I mean, basically.
How you doing?
So, first thing I want to get into.
Yes, please.
As Connor is
mute him.
That's what I just did. All right. Anyway, first thing I want to get into is, obviously there were a lot of blowouts. I think the smallest margin of victory was Notre Dame over Indiana, which honestly, a lot of those points that Indiana scored were garbage time. Game was basically over. So like there's a big stuff going on with the national media about SMU and Indiana not deserving a spot. However, I think it's kind of ironic because nobody's saying that about Tennessee, who got dog walked worse than both of those teams. First of all, what are your guys' thoughts on that? And on the national media treating SMU and Indiana differently?
Well, I think that this is just proof that we should go to an 8-team playoff. I mean, there was no point in playing those games. We did the experiment. The experiment's over. Let's go to 8 teams instead of 12. Right now we have we could see blowouts in the next round too, I guess, but I don't see a need in playing those extra games, especially when it doesn't help anybody moving forward. I don't know. I like the whole thing with SMU. I went on record saying that I think that Alabama and Ole Miss would have put up better numbers than both SMU and
Indiana,
because I do think that those two teams are better teams. Would they have gotten blown out? Maybe, but
do you think they would? Do you think they would have won? That's the question.
I'm not going to say that they would win, but I do think Alabama would have put up a better fight against Notre Dame. I think that, I think Ole Miss would have put up a better fight than SMU did. Obviously, there's the Tennessee thing, but I think Tennessee, in my opinion, played the toughest out of that group, just as far as environment-wise, playing in the horseshoe, talent-wise. I think Ohio State is probably the best team out of all of them. So I'm not taking too much away from them. Clemson put up a fight. They didn't lay down. I mean, they definitely put up a fight. Texas was just a better team. And I expected more of those 38-24 games rather than the 38-10 or the 42-17. And obviously, like you alluded to earlier, the Notre Dame game was pretty much done. I think your defense stopped playing.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing is my only pushback on the people that immediately after the Indiana game, SMU games happened. Oh, Alabama would have gave them a better fight. Oh, see, this is why Ole Miss should have got in. This is why South Carolina should have got in. My pushback on that is that we're reverting back to hypotheticals. If Alabama could give Notre Dame a better fight than Indiana, how can we sit there and say that when they played a 6-6 Oklahoma team and got their doors blown off? How can we sit here and say that Ole Miss would give Penn State a better fight when they lost at home to a 4-8 Kentucky team that had one SEC win, one Power 5 win all year, and that was against Ole Miss?
Yeah, but what are you leaving out?
I mean, I just don't think that you can leave out Indiana.
You're leaving out a key piece to both of those teams.
They beat Georgia. That's literally that's the only thing that they would have.
Exactly. They beat the number 2 seed in the entire thing. So that's more than SMU, and that's more than SMU. That's more than Clemson. That's more than Indiana can say all season. That's more than even Tennessee and Texas can say all season. They actually beat one of the teams that are in the playoff. None of those teams did. I mean, obviously Clemson beat SMU, but whatever.
But the reason that Tennessee is in the playoff and not Alabama and Ole Miss is because they beat teams like Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. They didn't lose 2 games to unranked teams. That's why they're in and not Alabama and Ole Miss. I just think it's kind of yeah. When we sat here and we had this conversation when the CFP came out, he just I get it. The wins have to matter, but your losses also have to matter. And I just don't think you can say without a shadow of a doubt that a team that got blown out 24-3 to an Oklahoma team, by the way, that's in a complete rebuild, and be like, yeah, they would have gave Notre Dame a better fight. How do we know Notre Dame doesn't blow the doors off of Alabama? I mean, Alabama's defense is atrocious. I mean,
right, we don't know that, but I think the difference comes in the teams that Indiana had played. Yeah, I get it. They won, and they can only do as much as their schedule gives them.
Mm-hmm.
But they were a victim to the no divisions in the Big Ten, where they played only one of the Big Four, so to speak, and they got blown out by 30. So
what the talking heads at ESPN are afraid of is Georgia now getting their doors blown off by Notre Dame, and both SEC teams are out in their first game and not putting up a fight, because I guarantee you there's going to be, if that happens, there's going to be some talking heads in ESPN that will be like, oh, well, maybe Alabama, would have put up a better fight if they had been in and stuff like that. I guarantee that if that happens. And it's just kind of hilarious that it's gone like this. But it's very conspicuous how no one at ESPN or anyone has been talking about Tennessee losing worse than Indiana and SMU. And I guess the only thing that people can claim is that at least Tennessee made it closer before halftime. That's about the only thing I can honestly say that they did better than Indiana or SMU. But
what happens when
closer at halftime? I mean, Indiana gave Ohio State more of a battle and more of a fight than Tennessee did through the first half. I mean,
what happens when Texas and Georgia both lose this week?
I forgot about Texas. I forgot about them.
What happens when they both lose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Texas plays who? Boise?
No, Texas plays Arizona State.
Dude, I think we would all laugh if Arizona State beat Texas.
I think it's going to happen. I think Arizona State's going to play Oregon for the semifinal. That's how I think that goes.
That's probably that's Lucas's like one nightmare matchup though, probably.
No, because I think Oregon matches up perfectly with Arizona State, because the thing with Arizona State is they want to get you into.
I'm just talking about this. I'm just talking about the Sun Devil voodoo magic they have, but that's only at home at night.
Yeah, it's not at home at night. It's not Pac-12 after dark. I'm genuinely, as an Oregon fan, I'm not at all worried about any of these teams. I think the only team, and I said this in our group chat, I think the only team that I would actually have like some worry about would be Notre Dame, because I think they're the only team. I think they're the only team that can match us up front. I just like with Georgia and their quarterback issues, they're not going to be able to beat a team like Oregon. I would even say maybe even a team like Notre Dame without a quarterback, without good quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
But I just really don't think that there's any team in the college football playoff that can beat the Ducks right now. I mean, maybe Ohio State, but they didn't even have to try. Like, watching that game, that was the worst offensive line and defensive line play I have seen by Tennessee all season, for one. And for two, I think it might have been the worst I had seen in the playoff. I mean, maybe SMU played worse offensive line play, maybe. But it was terrible, dude. It was terrible. It was like watching a high school team play a middle school team.
Yeah. All right, let's get into these games real quick. We'll talk about them briefly for maybe like a couple minutes apiece. Let's start off with the Friday night game. You know, obviously, I was there. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts because you guys watched it from home. Obviously, like we talked about earlier, the game was out of hand. I think the game was kind of over the minute Notre Dame got that interception and Jeremiah Love ran it in for the 98-yard touchdown. I think that was kind of a haymaker to Indiana, which they never recovered from. But what are your guys' thoughts on the game? Thoughts on Notre Dame? Thoughts on Indiana? You know, what do you guys think about Coach Signetti talking shit all the way leading up to the game to kind of not really back it up? But go ahead, Connor.
So the way I saw it was that game kind of reminded me of the 2019 Ravens versus Titans game, where I maintained from that game that if the Ravens had scored first, and not thrown the pick that ended their first drive, they would have won, because that team worked very well being out front. And I think Indiana, obviously, if they'd scored first there, even after the pick, if they hadn't given that up, forced a 3-9, I think that would have, given them some good momentum. If they got a touchdown first, I think they would have been a lot closer and maybe would have been a little bit more competitive. Because, they got that pick off of Leonard, too, to start that drive off. So that would have been a good momentum swing for them. I think that Love touchdown just sucked all the kind of emotion and momentum out of them. I didn't see most of the rest of the game because I was working. So I did see that.
What do you think about, like Coach Signetti talking, all the shit, especially on game day? He's like, we beat top 25 teams too. We beat the shit out of top 25.
When I don't think they played a single top 25 team since Ohio State and lost that game. You want to support and back your own team, but there's got to be a realm of plausibility and like believability, right? And like anyone on game day could have just been like, yeah, you actually have not done that, so you're just full of it.
Well,
honestly,
he did. They did, but Signetti pulled out that when they played Nebraska was ranked in the coaches poll. Yeah.
Oh, please.
Jeez. But yeah, overall, what were your thoughts on how Notre Dame played? Were you impressed? Did they kind of do what you thought they would do to Indiana?
I mean, yeah, it was exactly how I thought it was going to go. It was going to be, wasn't going to be like, other than like running the ball, Notre Dame's offense was going to be very methodical, try and drain the clock, put Indiana behind the sticks in a position where they're not able to be out in front. Defensively, once that Love touchdown happened, Notre Dame was just able to pin their ears back and just kind of go at it. And Leonard didn't, other than the first pick, Leonard didn't put the ball in any further harm that was going to hurt them at all. So, it was just a very good methodical drive or win for them.
All right. Lucas, what were your thoughts on the game?
I think Riley played very well. I just, like I said earlier, I just think that Notre Dame's they're going to be one of the teams at the end because of the way that they play in the trenches. Indiana just couldn't do anything offensively. Rourke probably played one of his worst games that he has played all season, probably his worst game that he's played all season. Yeah, it just came down to the trenches, and Notre Dame just had more, and they were balling out. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it.
What were your thoughts about, Signetti talking a lot of shit leading up, especially on game day? It seemed like he kind of had a very conservative game plan. I believe there are a lot of people that criticized him for the 4th and 11 early in the fourth quarter near midfield that he decided to punt when they were already down, I believe, 13. What are your thoughts on how he coached and especially with how much he talked before the game?
Well, all I'm going to say is the Big Ten Coach of the Year and Coach of the Year in college football should be in Eugene, Oregon right now and not in fucking Indiana, because that was terrible coaching. It was from start to finish. The coach was terrible. You get to a point where your cockiness just bites you in the ass, and he was way too cocky the entire game and before the game, and it completely bit him. I don't know. I'm not a fan. I think he reminds me of Sirianni for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I despise that guy. I think I want the worst for both of them when it comes to football. I hate that. I hate that level of cockiness to where you're like everybody's crap, everybody's terrible, and then his comment about Notre Dame lost to NIU. We should have the home game. We should have the home position. And it's like you guys just got dog walked. There was a reason why they had Notre Dame ahead of you guys, because college football committee isn't completely brain dead.
Well, my thing is I was at game day. I heard his comments. And so I'm thinking he's going to be aggressive. They're going to go for it on 4th down. They're going to return every single kick. Instead, it almost seemed like to me, Indiana and Signetti was coaching like they had a game next week, and they were saving a lot.
That's a way of putting it.
Like pussy coaching. He was scared, and this team was scared. To talk all that shit all week, to have your guys thinking that they're the underdog and to buy that mentality, you have to coach like that on the field.
Right.
You talk the talk, walk the walk. Dan Lanning is great because he talks a lot of shit, but he is able to back it up. And he coaches like it on Saturday. Signetti doesn't do that. He talks a lot of shit, and then when it's Saturday and he's lined up against a team that is better, it's just you just get the sense that Indiana felt that game was too big. The lights were too bright.
I'm calling it that within 3 years, Signetti's gone.
Well,
after that extension.
To me, I think there's a difference though between talking shit and confidence. And Dan Lanning, when you listen to him, he doesn't talk shit. He doesn't. He's just extremely confident in what his team can do. And that's the difference between him and Signetti, is that Signetti literally just talks shit. He will talk shit about another team, and he'll get his ass handed to him, and it makes great TV. Like when Will Howard put out the cigarette, it makes great TV. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why he thought that bringing in a bunch of JMU guys and he was gonna just rule the roost and beat up on a bunch of no-name schools and low-level Big Ten schools was gonna crown him national champion. But
Well, and the thing I don't have respect for him is and we're gonna get to the next game after this. I don't have respect for him because he talks a lot of shit. He doesn't back it up on Saturdays. And then when he loses, all the excuses. Immediately after the game. Well, every good thing comes to an end at some point. We weren't supposed to be here from the start. Blah, 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 blah. Like, this is my first year here. Like, okay, you knew that. Why were you talking shit? Like, you don't see Marcus Freeman out here going on Sports Center, every single college show that you can listen to, saying, man, Indiana's dog shit. Like, why are they even in the playoff? Like, I don't have respect for that. I really don't.
Right.
But, all right, let's get to the next one. Penn State, SMU. I didn't get a chance to watch this game. I did listen to it on the radio. From my point of view listening to it, SMU, especially in the first half, lost this game more than Penn State won it, at least in the first half.
No.
The 2 pick sixes, Penn State wasn't really doing anything on offense. I just think that SMU gave that game away in the first half.
I watched none of this game because I was out of the tailgate for the Ravens Steelers game, so I have nothing to say about this game.
I watched most of it, and you're wrong. And the reason why you're wrong is because those guys, they couldn't block a Pee Wee League school. Like their offensive line could not block Penn State at all. And it caused Jennings couldn't do anything. And so he started forcing the ball and he started making mistakes. And those 2 pick sixes were because of pressure, because they could not block Abdul Carter. They couldn't do anything in the trenches. And then once Penn State started running the ball well, then it was over from there. SMU didn't have a chance in this game from the first whistle. Like it was over from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing the other takeaway I had was Jennings was like listening to the radio call. He had Penn State defenders in his face the minute the ball was snapped.
Every single play.
He was getting killed every single play. And I think when I kind of forgot about this, I think a lot of people did too. The SMU team was a G5 school last year. They have a G5 offensive line.
Yeah.
And it showed against Clemson, because Clemson did the same thing. And it showed against Penn State. And I think that I agree with what you said. I was just more saying the 2 pick sixes that Penn State got, that ended the game. Even because I'll be honest, Penn State was not doing too much on offense until the second half. But yeah, I mean, I think SMU was just outmatched in the trenches, and we've seen that from both Indiana and SMU,
and Tennessee as
well, which is crazy for an SEC team because it's supposed to mean more. Let's go ahead and move on because I know Connor didn't watch that one. Let's get to Texas Clemson. This one, I picked Clemson to win because I still don't think Texas is as good as everybody thinks. I still don't. What were your guys' thoughts on the Texas Clemson game?
I also could not watch this game because I was at the Steelers-Ravens game after this, so I never got to see anything. I only saw a few highlights. I only saw like a few highlights and stuff. Looks like Clemson was able to keep it close at first, but Texas just was able to pull away and stuff. I saw something. I think Texas is like the first team to have like 4 rushing touchdowns in a playoff game. So I guess they were able to get the run game going, which is good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was another one of those. I think this is more like what you were saying, Ryan, about SMU. I think Clemson kind of gave this game away. They were playing very well, on their first drive, obviously scored a touchdown. They were playing really well in defense, and it just they couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the run, and they started cooking at the end on offense. They cut it within 7, and then it was just, that run game by Texas was just too much. They couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I watched most of this game. And this is my takeaway. Again, Texas is still overrated. I think they're not as good as everybody thinks. I agree with you. I think Clemson gave this game away more than Texas won it. But man, looking back at it, what's crazy is Cade Klubnik might be the best quarterback that Texas has faced all year.
Oh, he
And
is,
that's
for sure.
that's not like Diego Pavia is probably up there, but like
Cade Klubnik is good though. Like, we can disrespect him all we want, but Cade Klubnik is good. If you look at his stats this year, obviously Clemson doesn't have any playmakers because their best receiver plays for fucking Notre Dame now. So, like, with what he had and the stats that he put up, I think he threw like almost 40 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, but like in terms of like what Texas could face down the line, I think Dylan Gabriel is way better. I think.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if Will Howard's better. Maybe the same.
He's better.
Okay. Would you say Sam Levitt is better?
No. I wouldn't say he's better, but he's like this. The thing about Sam Levitt is he is like efficient as all hell, and he's smart. He is super smart. I think he's only thrown like maybe 4 or 5 interceptions this year. I could be way wrong on that, by the way. Don't fact check me. But he's super smart, and the thing about Arizona State is they don't need good quarterback play to win because they got a little white demon out there in the backfield. They don't need a quarterback to win, man.
They just have to not turn the ball over.
So if we replace Josh with another guy that whose name starts with J, named John.
So this is my boy John. We've had him on the show a couple times. He's a Georgia fan, so he's here when we break down the second round matchups. Where he's here for that. All right, let's get to this final game that was played Saturday night. Obviously, Tennessee fans did a whole lot of shit talking, a whole lot. They invaded Columbus, Neyland North, as they like to call it, just to get absolutely embarrassed on national TV. Worse than SMU and worse than Indiana. It was so bad to the point where Ohio State fans the entire second half were chanting SEC. Tennessee embarrassed themselves. What are your guys' thoughts on the game? Start with Lucas.
Well, like I said earlier, they have nobody in the trenches. They were playing with Pee Wee League offensive linemen that whole game, and it just shows the difference between teams like, even Michigan and, Oregon, where the trenches matter. I'm not 100% sure how Tennessee was able to win 10 games with an offensive line like that, but
Yeah.
they lost the games that mattered, I guess. That's all I really have to say about it. Ohio State was just better.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know, funny
surprised.
enough,
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I saw them this year many times. I went and saw them live last night in Columbus. I was on the field for that game. And I was also on the field in Athens when they played. They played Georgia in mid-November. So you look at how they set up their team. And I kind of disagree. I think their trenches are incredible compared to what we saw last night. They have the guys to be there. You have Cooper Mays at center. Cooper Mays was high 4, low 5 star coming out of just a cherry pick. Cooper Mays. Like Cooper Mays was a good high school prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And they have guys like that have legacy offensive line recruits that, any team would be lucky to have. What killed them last night, they actually did quite well early on when they were trying in the game to hold Ohio State, running the ball. They actually did quite well. Their defensive line got push. They weren't really breaking more than 4 or 5 yard carries, but their third level was just atrocious. Their second and third level just didn't look like they knew what they were doing. You looked at their safeties and it was like, man, are these guys – do these guys have scholarships coming out of high school? And it hasn't seemed like that all year for Tennessee. They've looked like a complete football team, all 3 levels defensively. I don't know. I saw them last night get out-coached. They didn't necessarily get out-talented, besides maybe at their secondary level. They got out-coached, out-schemed, and they got out-game planned, realistically, by an Ohio State team that's failed to do that over the past 3 years. And that's why I think you have Ohio State fans tearing up the grass. They're excited. They're really excited because that's the first time they've seen their team not just out-talent somebody. That's the only reason they won is because they out-talented them. And to be quite honest, 2-3 years. But you look at a Tennessee team that they didn't really look good down the stretch of the season. Their offense is lethargic. I think a lot of SEC fans would say that. That definitely isn't our best foot forward per se. When you look at how the Southeastern Conference looks this year, but they kind of had it easier compared to a lot of us. But yeah, there's a lot of questions. How did they get 10 wins? How did they pull it out versus Vanderbilt was the weirdest one to me. And what's crazy about them is they should have really, like, honest to God, had 11. They should have been an 11-1 team. And
They probably
that's probably true.
And that's the funniest thing about the Southeastern Conference is you can have teams that, like Georgia, they run a gauntlet mid-November, and then you can have teams like Tennessee that they played 3 guys all year, and then
Texas,
they're struggling against
Texas didn't play nobody besides Georgia.
Texas played nothing. Texas played no team above like 40 or 50 besides Georgia. Michigan was what? Michigan was the second best team they played.
Yeah.
Definitely the best front 7 they played outside of Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's definitely not our best foot forward. But Ohio State looked really good.
My thing, because I watched the game, and I want to get Connor's.
I gotta go, guys.
All right.
I'll give you my thoughts real quick. So yeah, I think it was Tennessee. I mean, Nico was just running for his life, and I think Ohio State was taking out all their frustration about the Michigan game out of Tennessee is how I saw it kind of, and it looked like Tennessee was a player or two away from being able to do some things like the deep catch right before like the first or second touchdown for Ohio State. They seem to have guys like right in position that just couldn't make the play, which is always how it goes usually. But it's I'm just excited for Ohio State, Oregon, really.
All right.
Okay, my flight's boarding, so I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Safe travels.
Yep. All right, let's get into these semifinal match or not semifinal, quarterfinal matchups. One more thing on the Tennessee game, really quick. I did think when I was watching it, Nico had to run for his life a lot of that game, and it was kind of sad to see that Ohio State after halftime, especially, they just stuck to rushing 4 because they were just getting pressure with 4 guys and able to stop the run with 4 guys. But nonetheless, we got to quarterfinals. We got rid of the pretenders, and now it's just the contenders, besides maybe Boise State. Let's go with the weakest of the 4 matchups with Boise and Penn State. What are your guys' thoughts on this matchup? How do you guys see this playing out? Start with Lucas.
Well, actually, I do think that Boise State can match up in the trenches with Penn State. I think it's going to really come down to what's the game plan for Ashton. If they can force Maddox Madsen to try to beat them, I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I do think he's a good quarterback, but I just don't think he's going to be able to do just that. I don't know. I mean, Boise State, they faced off against a team just like this in Oregon week 2. Obviously, Oregon was a much different team in week 2, but still they gave us all we could handle and about won that game. Well rested. Obviously Penn State didn't have to put too much out there against SMU, but I think it'll be an interesting game. I think it'll be really interesting, and I would not be surprised if Boise State was able to win this with a big game from Ashton.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like Penn State, their front 7, especially on defense, they have guys. And, Boise State just flat out, I don't really think they do. But you mentioned Maddox Madsen. I think he's been very efficient all year when he's had to throw the ball, especially in games like versus Oregon, which was really the only challenge that they had this year. The only game I guess you can mention the UNLV games. Those were both within, 20 some odd points. But all of those games that he's had to step up, he's stepped up. I think the game is going to come down to whether he can step up. We know all about how they can run the football. Penn State's great at defending the run. Like that's going to be a competitive thing. But Penn State has struggled at times this year defending teams that can throw all over the place. No, I'm not saying I'm not saying Penn State needs to go out or Boise State needs to go out there and just throw all over the field. I'm just saying they need to be able to, when it's 3rd down and 8, they need to be able to convert that at like 30, 40%. And I think they'll have a shot at this game where you can get yourself in good running downs, because we know their running game's incredible. We know that their defense has been pretty solid this year. And I don't think anyone's worried about Penn State's offense. I think that side of the ball, it's going to be pretty competitive. But if Boise State wants to win this game, which I think they're 10.5-point dogs, they're going to need to neutralize Penn State's front 7. And I think, contrary to what Luke said, I personally am of the opinion that they have guys. Like, they have really good players there.
And I'll speak on that too. I agree with you. But I also think that it's so hard to go back to week 2. I get it, but it's the only thing that we really have on Boise State is week 2. Obviously in that game against Oregon. Oregon has guys too, and we got in there and we did, and they did well. Like Jordan Birch did well. We had guys that did well, but there was just a difference in basically just Genty. I mean, he was the difference maker where that guy can break 17 tackles and it just doesn't matter. But I think going back to what you were saying, going back to Penn State's rush defense. I think Boise State's going to have to watch that Big Ten championship game a lot when preparing for this Penn State team, because Oregon found a way, and we had 2 guys that ran for over 80 yards in that game. And so Oregon found a way, and whatever we ended up doing in that game to find that way, they're going to have to do the same thing in this game in order to win. Do I think they're going to win? No. I think we're all in the same boat there.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible, and I'm gonna be a huge Boise State fan going into that game because I would love to see the underdog get the victory.
So here's my thing with Boise State and Penn State in this game. All Boise State has is Ashton-Jeanty. That is the only guy on the field for Boise State in this game that, to me, is a Power 5 level player.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can.
And the people, Boise State fans and people would bring, well, look what he did against Oregon. That was the same Oregon team
that had, Idaho fighting.
Yeah.
Idaho fighting till the last dying breath.
Yeah. And also, I think we've seen Boise State after that game. Go watch the game against Hawaii, where that was probably Ashton-Jeanty's worst game. They were stacking the box, and they were limiting him. Wyoming, who is arguably the worst team in the MAC, kept that game close because they were stacking the box. And Penn State's going to do the same thing. They've just got better dudes. Abdul Carter is going to have a field day.
Who's that linebacker too? That linebacker's a stud.
Tony Rojas.
Yeah.
I always forget his name. Yeah.
I love that guy. He's really fun to watch.
Yeah, but I'm all in all, I think we're on the same page with this one. I think Penn State wins. What do you guys think? What do you guys think score looking like for this one?
I think Penn State covers.
Boise State's undefeated in the Fiesta Bowl, man. They're wearing their Fiesta Bowl uniforms for this game. They're gonna pull out some Statue of Liberties in this one.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Statue of Liberty play in like 10 plus years.
Boise State's a good football team. Boise State's a good football team, and I don't think anyone's really saying that they don't belong to be here. But I think it's going to show that maybe they're not as good as they thought. And I'm of the opinion that they really just aren't a playoff caliber team. You win 11 games in the worst conference in the FBS, and everyone's up in hoorah. And I mean, there are teams with, like, in the MAC with better coefficients than Boise State, which the coefficient is something that we use to see, like, where these teams are, where out of 1 to 130, where. But anyway, what I'm saying, there's teams in the MAC that would be close to favored against Boise State. And I think looking at a week 2 Oregon matchup in which Oregon was not the same football team they were. Yeah. Well, Oregon also, we'll get to Oregon later, but Oregon's got problems, serious problems that need to be, that Ohio State now knows that they have said problems. And I'm not talking about, like, Oregon pretty much gave that game away to Ohio State and found a way to win back in, was it October? Yeah, it was early October. But anyway, I picked Penn State to cover. I think they cover easily.
I think Penn State wins this game by 17 plus. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you.
All right, let's get to this one. The next one, Texas against Arizona State. How do you think this one plays out? Because I think Scatterboo is going to have a lot of success. Georgia had a lot of success running the ball against this Texas defense. I mean, and I don't know. I don't think Georgia's got a running back that's as good as Scatterboo. But what do you think about this one?
I don't know. I think Texas's front seven is not SEC good. It's nationally good. It's kind of the same scenario, maybe a little bit better than Tennessee's on both ends of the ball, but they don't have any elite guys, so you don't really know that they're that great. But Texas's defensive front seven is very good, and their linebacking core. Ant Hill is probably the best linebacker in the country. And then they have some difference makers at cornerback and at safety. You got Makuba. I think he's a guy that, a lot of fans outside of the SEC or outside of Texas don't really follow him that closely, or Clemson. He was a really good Clemson player for a while. But, I mean, they have guys. And it's going to come down to the fact of can Arizona State really get to them? I don't think so. I'm not of the opinion that they can. I think
Yeah.
And honest to God, that I think, yeah, they'll run the ball well, but will they be able to throw the ball? You're saying Levitt. I mean, he's okay. I mean, I've never seen him. I've watched a good bit of Arizona State this year, more than I like to admit, but I've never seen anything out of him that's like, man, this is life-changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought for sure that it'd be Iowa State coming out of the Big 12 around mid-October, and then the wheels fell off their train, and then you had the interest between Colorado, BYU, Arizona. I mean, I never gave Arizona State a shot because of how they played. But I mean, they went out and they looked really impressive in the conference championship game. And they ran all over Iowa State. They're not going to be able to run all over Texas like that. They're just flat out not going to be able to. But I'll give them this. I do think this game's going to be a lot closer. Texas has a propriety to make games close. They like to keep games close. I have Texas to win and to cover, but it's not going to be like a 5-score game. It's probably going to be a 1 or 2 score game. 2,
Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I was talking about Sam Levitt a little bit before. Born and raised Oregon boy, you know, he's got that grit. But he's efficient. He's smart. He's smart with the football. He knows when not to force it. I think he went the first 4 or 5 games of the season without throwing an interception. But I think the reason why they're here is because of coaching. And I think Kenny Dillingham is one of the great coaches in college football right now. I think he's going to be one of the best coaches in college football for a long time. Dude's only 34 years old. He's going to be coaching for maybe another 40 years. But great coaching only gets you so far. You got to have guys. And I think Texas they have guys and a good coach at that. I just think they're going to be a little bit too much for Arizona State. I would love for Arizona State to win this game because I want to see Dilly and Dan Lanning face off in the semifinal. I think that'd be awesome. But I just think Texas is going to just have a little bit too much for them. Yeah, and I see Texas. I see Texas taking this. Probably because what's the spread? 13.5, I think. I could see Texas covering this at 14.
Yeah, so I'm in the difference of opinion of both you guys. I've been a hater of Texas's all year. The fact that UMass has played more top 25 SEC teams than Texas has is sad. Texas played one good team all year, and that was Georgia. They got belt to ass at home the first time. The second time, they lost to the backup quarterback. Their offense is so inconsistent. So inconsistent. I still am not a believer in Quinn. I still think Arch gives them the best chances going forward. This is where I think they get caught. I think a lot of people are sleeping on this Arizona State team because they're in the Big 12. Outside of South Carolina, Arizona State is the hottest team in college football right now. They beat 4 ranked opponents. Hold on. 4 ranked opponents in the final 5 weeks of the season. South Carolina is the only team to have done that. And they put belt to ass to 3 of the 4. I think Arizona State is going to get Texas. I think Scatterboo is going to run wild. And I think Arizona State shocks the world. I think Texas is fraudulent as all get out. And that game against Clemson to me proved it. Because like we talked about earlier, before John had hopped on, I think Clemson gave that game away more than Texas won it. And I think Arizona State's a better team than Clemson. But yeah, I mean,
that's how I feel about the Penn State SMU game. I feel like Penn State did nothing to win that game. Not a thing. I feel like they did not do a thing to win that game. But yeah, I kind of agree with you that I don't know. I have buddies that they work for Clemson, and their spirits weren't very high per se before that game. They thought And Texas is supremely talented. And I mean, I don't think they're fraudulent, but I don't think they're at the level of, being the third or fourth best team in the country. They're very good. Don't get me wrong. And they have a lot of difference makers everywhere they look.
Yeah.
But their front seven is not top of the SEC good, like it's been called out to be. And that's what a lot of analysts are like, well, Texas, this is why they're my national championship pick. It's because no, their offensive line is not. All I need to tell you is Georgia had something like 30 tackles for loss in 2 games versus them.
That's
30.
absolutely
That
wild.
is a season. That's a season number in 120 minutes. Well, a little more than 120 minutes of football. But
all right.
And something to point out too, Arizona State, they have they have as many Power 5 wide receivers as Boise State has. With Jordan Tyson not playing, and he was one of the best. I mean, he was my favorite wide receiver to watch all season outside of Tez Johnson. With him being gone, it's going to be real tough for them to throw the ball when they have to.
He's not playing.
No, he's done for the year.
No, he's done for the year.
Last report I heard from was that he might be back. Oh my gosh, yeah, no, they're getting beat by 30.
If he does play somehow, because last time I saw him, he was in like a cast. So if he somehow plays in this game, then that gives them a better chance for sure.
Who was that receiver that they had that went off in the Big 12 title game? Had like 150 yards, something like that.
I think he's a true freshman, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
But again, I guess that is going against Iowa State. But let's get to the 2 games that really matter. The 2 games that me and Lucas, and I think John would agree with this. These are the 2 games that I think the national whoever wins these games, the 2 winners will be facing off against each other in Atlanta.
Likely. I can't say that for certain yet. I don't know if Georgia wins. I don't know how we'll fare against Penn State because they are the team that team just screams we can beat Georgia.
I think John, what we're doing is we're assuming that Penn State's not going to beat an actual contender because that's
right. And I mean, there's no reason to assume that they should. but this is a game that would be a game that Georgia just classically loses over. Because you remember, before the past couple of years, Georgia was that team. Was that team. So, I mean, and I don't know, all of us kind of retreated to pre-2016 Georgia fans this year. We thought, well, we can't beat anyone. Then we ended up beating Tennessee and Texas, so it felt pretty good. But anyway, yeah, Oregon, Ohio State. So you look at this. This is a rematch of a game that I think Oregon gave away to Ohio State, and then Ohio State gave back away to Oregon. Great football game. Came down to literally the last second in a game-winning drive, a potential game-winning drive from Ohio State that just never happened because Jeremiah Smith was a little handsy and Will Howard didn't look up at the clock. I don't think they're going to have that type of clock management issues. I think that's one thing you're going to be able to count on for Ohio State in this game is that they're going to be able to manage the clock, and that's probably going to be their biggest priority is managing the clock because that screw them. Yeah, Penn State, Oregon would be nuts, but I don't think that's happening. I think Oregon didn't care to be in that game. Anyways, back to it. Ohio State, man, they look a lot better than they did, and they really have looked really good. Barred the Nebraska game, this second half in the Michigan game. I thought that was kind of obvious. But that's how you beat Ohio State is you get them to line up in the eye and make you run it down your throat. Because Michigan does have good corners, they have good safeties, and they for sure have a good D line. But I think Ohio State wins this game. As much as it hurts me to say, I am the world's largest Ohio State hater. I hate that university. I hate the city of Columbus. I hate the state of Ohio. I mean, I watched last game. I am a Georgia fan. I was born in Athens. I mean, I was rooting for Tennessee. I wanted Tennessee, the same Tennessee that was happy to hurt Nick Chubb in 2015 and that threw a Hail Mary in 2016. I don't know. But anyways, Ohio State, they've looked good. They showed that they can put out a competent game plan. And to me, what this game's going to look like is it's going to start with Ohio State running the football well. They really, to be quite honest with you, didn't when they played Oregon the first time. I don't think Oregon's front four are that great. I think their linebackers are incredible. I think their secondary is a little weaker than much be seen, but their front seven or their front four, isn't as physical as a lot of people say it is. They've had the benefit of they've really played Ohio State, who at that time was not really caring to be physical, and they played a Penn State team that was just happy to be there. But you look at the Oregon side, and this is an offense that can score whenever they want to at the snap of a finger. They have, in my opinion, better weapons than Ohio State does, and they have a better quarterback. I think Dylan Gabriel is the most cynically underrated player in college football. I think maybe not underrated, maybe overlooked is the better word. He is the thing that makes this offense tick. And to say he's better than Bo Nix was is an understatement, because Bo Nix threw for a lot, high completion percentage, whatever. There are no real decisions in his hand. It was hitch, it was slant. There wasn't much of him throwing the ball around quite like you see Dylan Gabriel right now. I mean, just gunslinging. He does whatever he wants. He can call play. He can call a shot in that Oregon offense, and they'll listen to him. So I don't know. I personally think. I don't know. What's the spread? Ohio State 1.5. I think it's hard to not cover 1.5 and still win. So I'd pick them to cover, just because it's hard to beat a team the second time around. And I don't know. You're looking really at a guy that you're really looking at an Ohio State team that's playing their best come December, and you're looking at an Oregon team that, to be quite honest, their defense kind of got exposed versus a very weak Penn State offense.
So I'll let Lucas go here really in a second. I just wanted to say, me personally, I think Oregon's a better team. For me, I can't get that Michigan game out of my head. And I think Dan Lanning is smart enough to realize what the weaknesses that Ohio State showed in that game. And I think Ohio State's a team where if you out-physical them, they're a team that'll get inside their own head and almost kind of lay down. That's how they've been under Ryan Day. That's how I think it'll continue to be under Ryan Day. And I think Oregon is just as a tougher-minded team, and they've shown way less weaknesses than Ohio State has. Now, Oregon's defense, yes, it's been a problem the last couple weeks, but I mean, they have the least amount of holes of anybody in the CFP. That's why they're the number one team in the nation. That's why they're the only undefeated team left. Go ahead, Lucas.
All right, so I heavily disagree with the comment about our front four, especially given the fact that Jordan Birch is going to be back in this game. He did not play in the original game against Ohio State, and we were still able to get in there constantly.
That is huge. That is massive.
I think a big thing, too, is we played Ohio State exactly how you're not supposed to play Ohio State the first time we played them. We made it a shootout. The way you beat Ohio State in the past has always been you out physical them. I mean, that's what Michigan has done every single year for the past 4 years. And Georgia's done the same thing where they've out physicaled them. We played it wrong. We shouldn't have played it a shootout like that. And we left off, I think when I went back and looked at it, I think we left off like 15 points or something like that off the scoreboard. Probably should have beat them worse than we did. And so I don't know. It is hard to beat a team twice, but I watched the Fuskies do it to us last year. So it's not impossible to do that. I don't know. I just have a ridiculous amount of confidence in this team. And like you were saying, Dylan Gabriel, there's a difference between Dylan Gabriel's ran offense this year and Bo Nix's last year. And it's just that she wants more goldfish. The biggest difference is Dylan Gabriel can just take over. He can do what he wants. and really just take over. And I think we're going to play a more physical game in this one. And yeah, I think we come out with the win. And honestly, I think we could end up beating them by a couple scores. I really do. I think we're basing our Ohio State off of this one game that we just watched. And I get it, you're only as good as your most recent, but I don't think the Tennessee fans showed up, the Tennessee team didn't show up. And I can't sit here and base their performance and how good I think they're going to be this following week off of this one game where they just dominated. I don't know, but I think the Ducks win. I think it's by a couple scores, and we'll be happy to meet Notre Dame or Georgia in the national championship.
Yeah, well, to do that, you also got to get past Texas, who also has the recipe in my eyes to beat Oregon. The easiest way to beat Oregon is let their offense make mistakes. That's going to happen, and try and abuse their front seven, which, again, Oregon's three most talented. No, Jordan Burch is their best recruit. I think Jordan Burch is the best recruit they've ever had.
What about Mateo? You're forgetting about Young Concrete.
He's good. He's a contributor. He's a serious contributor. Yeah.
I mean, he killed Ohio State in that first matchup.
Yeah, I think
absolutely killed.
I mean, obviously there was Kayvon Thibodeau, so he was the highest recruit that we've ever had.
And Birch is not far off numbers wise. I think Birch was like a 9.942. But anyway, point being, three of your four best D-line recruits on team are non-contributing freshmen. Birch being the only like serious exception to that. And I think Ohio State may not have.
You can't forget about Derek Harmon, who has the most pressures in the Big Ten this year.
Derek Harmon's a good player, but Derek Harmon also got a lot of those pressures versus Purdue, and I don't want to really trash the Purdue program, but they're just not on the same level as.
Go ahead.
Please.
It was so bad that your own head coach mispronounced Indiana for Purdue because he doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, but I don't know. I think either team really has a good shot to win this game. I think betting is going to be 50-50.
Yeah.
I think the public's going to be split 50-50, and for good reason, because we've seen this game before, and we saw Oregon try and give it away over and over and over, and eventually not, by Ohio State choking like they do. But you also got to realize this is Ohio State. They choke. That's what they're literally known for.
Yeah.
Hey, we are too in these situations. I mean, in postseason, Oregon is not the best. I mean, when we play teams like Liberty, we're fine. But
that's actually what I was about to get to. Is that
when we play better
top
teams,
5 teams?
Yeah,
I think has Day won a game besides Penn State?
No.
Oh, sorry, has Lanning won a game? Because 40-93 versus Georgia, had to sneak that one in. Washington both times last year.
And
they
then
beat Ohio State.
He has Ohio State and Penn State.
Ohio State and Penn State. So he's actually. I think that Ohio State wins the biggest win that y'all's programs have.
Actually, you know what's crazy is Dan Lanning has a better record against top 5 teams than Ryan Day does.
No,
absolutely wild.
I don't think that's crazy at all. Dan Lanning's a winner. And, I mean, Dan Lanning has experienced winning at every single place he's went along his way. He's an Alabama grad kind of an Alabama grad. He's an Alabama GA. Sorry,
he's a Nick Saban grad is what he is.
He's a Kirby Smart grad. He actually didn't have much to do under Nick Saban at all. He instead of more of Saban, he learned more. He got more hands-on after Mel Tucker left for Michigan State, and he kind of revolutionized our defense So schematically, again, defensively, schematically, I don't think Oregon's going to have a problem. Again, I think it's going to come down to Oregon's defensive line. Can they not get gashed on run plays? Gashed. I mean, you can allow 4 or 5 yards of carry for whatever you want, but when you come to stopping these 20, 30-yard runs they have great backs. Ohio State does.
I still am of the opinion that Keatron Allen and Nick Singleton are better than Quinshawn and Trayvon Henderson. But yes, you are correct. Like, we can't be giving up those kind of big plays like we did in the Big Ten title game. I think a big difference, which is kind of funny because the Big Ten title game essentially was the exact opposite of the Wisconsin game, where our offense couldn't do shit and our defense came up clutch, and then obviously our defense couldn't do anything, couldn't stop a sneeze, and our offense came up clutch. So I think that's a good sign for the Ducks, is that when they need to, they can do it. I just think another factor in this game is the travel distance. I mean, it's a short walk down to LA for us, and it's cross-country flight for Ohio State. I think that's something that you can put into that as well. It's also going to be,
they've had to play them in Pacific time zone both times.
And it's going to be, great weather. It's probably going to be like high 60s, low 70s, clear skies. I think that definitely favors the Ducks in that situation.
Is this a 3:30 game?
2 o'clock Pacific time. Yeah,
because I know Notre Dame, Georgia is the prime time game.
By prime time, you mean 2.5 hours past prime time? Because for God's sakes, why are we starting at 9 o'clock?
Because you saved the best for last, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's get to it. I mean, let's
get to the big one.
The big one for us.
Let's get to the only game that's going to be close.
Yeah, this game, just to let you know, this game is not going to be close because these two teams are on comparable levels. This game is going to be close because these two offenses and defenses are both. I don't have faith. If I had to put in a scoring competition between both these teams against even low-level opponents, I wouldn't feel good about either of them scoring 50. But I also wouldn't feel bad about either of them letting up a point either. These are teams that are football teams in all senses of the word. When you look at Notre Dame and what Marcus Freeman has built, you look at a team that is built the right way. You look at a team that their front seven is nice. Their back end, their 2 safeties are great. I think their corners, maybe from an outsider's perspective, their corners didn't look great against Indiana, which an Indiana team that was struggling to do anything, that was getting swallowed, by the way. Curtis Rourke didn't know what country he was in. He should have went back to Canada. But I think personally, what this game comes down to, believe it or not, is not Georgia's backup quarterback. No, it's Riley Leonard. If Riley Leonard can be efficient throwing the football, he gives Notre Dame a good shot. I think Notre Dame is going to struggle to run the ball more than they have all year, besides maybe Northern Illinois, which I know is a thorn in the side to hear for any Notre Dame fan. But the offense struggled. The offense struggled in all three ways. They struggled schematically, they struggled to out talent, and they struggled to out physical. So you looked at this has happened to Notre Dame before this year a multitude of times. I also think that Notre Dame hasn't really played. I think you could put Indiana together times 3, and you're still not even close to the talent Georgia has. I think.
What about? I think A&M's D line is probably
A&M's D line. Yeah, A&M's D line was definitely good, but then you look at A&M's back end, which right at that point in the year they weren't really doing anything. They couldn't tackle, and their linebacking core wasn't what it is at the end of the year. I think a lot. But you also played A&M that was giving the ball away at free will. I have Connor Wegman, my friend, that I call him arm punt. So when you look at Notre Dame, a lot of Georgia fans are going to say they haven't played anyone. I think they have played some, top 25 edge teams, and they played Indiana, which I think Indiana is worse than Texas A&M is right now, and Texas A&M's lost 4 games. So you look Notre Dame has impressive wins. They went into College Station and won, which, again, not very easy to do. But you also look and think, well, Riley Leonard still hasn't thrown for over 300 yards. And to me, it looks like that's what's going to happen for not necessarily 300 yards. But I said this to Ryan yesterday. It's like he's just going to have to be efficient. When you get backed up on third down, can you count on the throwing offense of Notre Dame to make a play against the most talented secondary with likely 2 day 1 draft picks in it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And then, I mean, Georgia's defense is as always, I know this goes without saying, Georgia's defense is loaded. You have Jalen Walker, who, in my opinion, is our third best linebacker, who won the Buckus. He alone had a Buckus-worthy season of games just versus Texas, solely versus Texas. And then you look at a Georgia front seven that's finally healthy. You finally have Kristen Miller back. You're finally going to see TID, Tyron Ingram Dawkins healthy. You're finally going to see a seriously healthy Warren Brinson, who has been hurt all year. And Georgia on the outside, weaker than we normally see Georgia. Daniel Harris is definitely an interesting mix-in, with Julian Humphrey both getting benched and leaving midseason. But on the outside, I don't really see Notre Dame having a game changer. Faison's their best guy. To me, what I watched this year at wide receiver, their biggest game changer. But, I mean, I think you stick a guy like Dalen Everett on him, and it becomes moot. I think that's going to be the side of the ball to watch, believe it or not, so for both ends.
My thing is, I think a lot of people are looking at this game going, how is
Ryan, do you want me to go really quick? I don't got much to say.
Ahead.
I'll let you guys do your thing.
Go.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be the side of the ball to watch is Notre Dame's offense against Georgia's defense because I have a hard time seeing how Georgia's going to really move the ball very well on Notre Dame's defense. I think they got a pretty good run game, but as far as it all comes down to Gunnar Stockton. I really have no idea how good the kid really is. I mean, coming into it, I thought, coming into the last game, I thought he was pretty good and he did what he needed to do to win. So props to him, but nobody really knows how good he really is. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think where the game is going to change. I think where the game is going to change is going to be on that side of the ball where is Riley Leonard going to be able to push the ball downfield? Are they going to be able to run the ball because that's Notre Dame's identity is running the football? It's going to be really interesting to watch. And obviously, I mean, to me, it really comes down to coaching. Can Coach Freeman, can he put together a big game against a really good opponent? He hasn't been able to do that so far in his career against a team at this level. Obviously, he lost to Ohio State twice. So it's going to be really interesting. And obviously, Kirby is Kirby. So he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. Kirby's going to do his thing. And it's going to be – I'm super excited to watch this football game. That's all.
Hold on, I gotta get a hat out from I have from the last time Georgia played Notre Dame at the Sugar Bowl.
So I agree with what you guys said. My thing is, I think a lot of people are paying too much attention to Notre Dame's offense versus Georgia's defense. My thing, and this is where I think this is the game can be won. Notre Dame's defense forces lots of turnovers. And I mean, once they force one, they force more. Once it rains, it pours. Because what they do is they make you make mistakes early in the game. They get inside your head. They create pressure, and they make you think that you got to continue to make up for those mistakes, which leads to more mistakes. We saw it with Tyler Shuck. We saw it with Connor Wigman. We saw it with Jordan Mayava. We saw it with guys that have had more in-game experience than Gunnar Stockton has. Like I said, they get inside your head. They're going to hit you. Even if you get that ball off, they're going to make you feel it every single time. That's the one thing Notre Dame has never had when we faced against Georgia is the attitude. I mean, we got guys that'll talk shit. Don Schuler will come up and crack you and then let you know about it afterwards. They like to get inside your head. They're very aggressive, very fast, they always are by the football, very rarely get beat. This is the thing for me is if Gunnar Stockton goes out there and he makes a mistake, because let's be honest, that pick he threw against Texas, horrific throw.
Well, you know why that pick was thrown. He didn't get the play call. They started the play call at 17 seconds. So he got the formation, and then he had to guess, and he didn't know the signs that were the sideline was throwing him because he's usually the guy giving this. The way we do it is we have 3 signers. One only knows one signs, one only knows. Anyway, that's.
But my thing, John,
we've
is
seen.
How does
I get
he,
what you're saying.
How does he react if he throws a pick? If he fumbles the ball? How does he react in that environment?
I think we saw it in overtime versus Texas. I think we saw that he responds well. I've watched Gunnar. I played against him in high school. I've watched Gunnar play forever. I've watched him play since he was an 8th grader. This guy's a gunslinger, and he does turn the ball over. But Georgia's proven that Georgia can win against great football teams. We turned the ball over 4 times in Austin. We turned the ball over 5 times in Tuscaloosa. Both of those games, mind you, I think we should have beat Alabama, even with the 5 turnovers. We went down there and we laid an egg, and we spotted them, 30 points, came back and almost won that game. We turned the ball over 4 times in Austin, and it's just Georgia's suffocating, and I mean seriously suffocating on that side of the ball on offense because it's like they can seemingly do nothing right and somehow score, somehow put drives together that can score. And it is not a pretty offense like you're used to seeing from the playoff teams of Georgia this decade. When you watch, Stetson Bennett have 17 guys wide open and he doesn't get sacked in 2 years. It's not that type of offense. This is a really gritty offense. One that, they lose yardage on plays. It's ugly. Like sometimes we get stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes there's balls that are thrown that shouldn't be thrown. And we have a historic drop problem. I mean, historic drop problem. One that I've never seen at the FBS level for any football team. Georgia leads the country in drops by a margin of 20. And Carson Beck still threw for 3,800 yards. So if you want to talk about this Georgia football offense with Gunnar Stockton, it's going to be a lot different than what you're used to seeing.
Oh, no, that's not my thing. I expect
I know, yeah.
I expect it to be a run-centric offense because that's what Gunnar Stockton does. That's what it was in the second half against Texas. I mean, you look at his numbers. I believe it was 12 for 16 for 78 yards. Had a 2 point something average depth per throw. So it was just short passes.
Yeah, they were just trying to get him to win that game. But don't be expecting to see that. Gunnar
I'm not
100 yards. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is Notre Dame's seen running offenses. We faced against Army, Navy that all their quarterbacks do is run the ball. Now, obviously, Army and Navy are not Georgia. Let's get that out of the way. We played Georgia Tech. They didn't have Haynes King, but they had a quarterback in Zach Pyron who was just as effective with his legs and arguably was a better passer. And we completely shut that down. We snuffed out every single thing that they were running.
I wish you would ask the Georgia Tech fans that I know how they think about Zach Pyron, and it's not just off of that game. They've never liked Pyron. They thought Philo should have been in that game. But Notre Dame did look really good against Tech. Yeah. But Tech's a completely different team than we are.
I also think that we faced better receiving cores.
Oh yeah, receiving core is definitely weaker than previous.
Like Louisville and USC. I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks, Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson. I don't think Georgia has those guys. I think Dominic Lovett's really good, but that man has a dropping problem. He gets open a lot, but when you throw him the ball, he drops it.
Lovett's been our screen guy this year. It's been a problem for all of our guys, but Arian Smith is the guy that he's open what seems like every down and somehow manages to stay in the game magically. But I mean, when you have a guy that runs a 10-12 100-meter dash on your team that is like 2 steps away from qualifying for the Olympics every year, yeah, you're gonna see him play, no matter if he can catch the ball or not.
If I had to give 3 guys that I think are X factors for this game for our side, Xavier Watts. I think he's a game breaker. He makes plays. He'll read it. He reads the ball and plays so well. I mean, if we seen it against USC last year. Once he gets rolling, he gets rolling. I think on the offensive side of the ball, Riley Leonard, obviously, got to be better passing the ball. I'm sure.
Because if he plays like he did versus Indiana, honest to God, I don't think y'all have a shot in hell winning that game.
But the thing with Riley, and this is the frustrating part with Riley for me. You know the throw he had late in the game against Indiana to Jordan Faison for 50 yards. That was. He has moments like that where he throws the most beautiful, accurate ball ever. And you see it maybe once, twice, if you're lucky, 3 times a game. If he could just put that together for even just 7 to 8 times, Notre Dame's offense would be so much better. Because we get guys that get open. I mean, Chris Mitchell is probably the fastest guy on our team. He gets open a lot. Riley either doesn't see him, takes off and runs, or he sees him, throws it to him, underthrows it, or severely overthrows it. If Riley can just hit when we get against Georgia and it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, if he can convert, that's why Georgia Tech was so effective against you guys, because when they got in 3rd down,
they just got to 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. I mean, because what they do is they ran the same read option play. They'd get our safeties out. They'd get because we run man. We pretty much exclusively run man. And what will happen is if we get a 3rd wide receiver out in a set, we'll pull Malachi Starks, who's the best combo safety, maybe bar Caleb Downs in the country.
Yeah.
He's just playing man coverage on a guy, and you're leaving it to a freshman KJ Bolden and a Dan Jackson that solely likes to hit people. Dan Jackson, both of those guys have been very good this year. Don't get me wrong, but they still have their qualms. But Georgia Tech, they got to 3rd down. When they did get to 3rd down, they have a very creative playbook that I just don't think Notre Dame has. But
I think we do. Denbrock has a creative playbook, but having Riley at quarterback is very limiting to what you can do. In that
his gameplay is not what you see out of a lot of
guys.
It's
not Jaden Daniels.
Right. Yeah. No. Denbrock. Yeah. I'm not saying Denbrock's not very creative. Denbrock, I've loved watching him ever since, in the SEC. We played against a Denbrock team in 2022, and it was honestly really fun. That was a really fun game for both fan bases. I mean, LSU got dogged.
I mean, if we had Jaden Daniels, we'd probably win this game.
Yeah. No, I think I'd be really scared if you had a Jaden Daniels type guy at quarterback. I agree with you in saying that Watts is the guy that you need to be looking for. He is a game breaker if he can step up. But he can play the best game of his life, and it's still going to come down to if Riley Leonard can convert these 3rd downs.
And the other
very obviously will be in.
The other guy is Jeremiah Love. He's the best player, without a doubt, and it's not even close on Notre Dame's offense. If he is effective, because this is how I feel about Notre Dame's run game, right? Until proven otherwise. Not saying we haven't played the best competition, but nobody has proven that they can stop Notre Dame's run game.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
I don't know if Georgia, and I think it's good enough to where I don't know if Georgia can necessarily fully stop it. I think the key for Georgia is to contain it and slow it down. But this is why Jeremiah Love is my last X factor. If he breaks a run, like say, kind of against Indiana.
I'm listening.
Say Gunnar Stockton goes out there and you guys get ball 3 and out, punt the ball to Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love breaks this 75, 70-yard touchdown run, right? That's how the game opens. That sets the tone. That's a haymaker that's been thrown. And I think that's something that Georgia has to be keyed in on. If Jeremiah Love has a 100-yard game, Notre Dame wins, in my opinion.
I think it's going to have to be more than 100. Haynes King had a 500-yard game.
We also got to keep in mind we rotate 3 different backs.
So do we.
Yeah.
But if Love's the hot hand, y'all will not stop feeding him. But, I mean, you look at a team in Texas that has run the ball versus whoever they want all year.
Yeah.
They had 300. I think they had 300 yards on the ground yesterday. They didn't even have 70 in 2 games against Georgia. And again, Georgia
weren't they without their left tackle?
The second game, but I don't think he's that good. A lot of people think he's the best tackle in football.
Okay.
My film study on him, versus UTEP, he's great. You know, he's amazing. He'll pancake everyone, but he got abused versus Georgia that first time. It seemed like we clued in on him. Like it seemed like we wanted to get to him first. But I don't think we're going to be able to fully stop anything. I think if you can keep the running game under 150 yards, then thumbs up, Georgia wins. And if not, I mean, it's going to be definitely tougher. I think we still can win. We've won again. We did beat Georgia Tech, allowing something like 650 yards of total offense.
And Tennessee ran for over 200 yards, and you guys still won that game pretty comfortably.
We didn't care about stopping Tennessee's run, though, very obviously. I think we just cared about making sure that they didn't do anything ridiculous in the passing game, which at first they did. They had a couple but they found ways to bust coverage against us. But the playbook's out for Tennessee. I mean, they can't go that deep, and once you see it, it's pretty easy to stop. The funniest thing to me about the Ohio State, I know we're backtracking here. The funniest thing to me about Ohio State, Tennessee, is there were times where it looked like Tennessee could come back and take the lead.
Yeah.
And they just – and then it's like to me, Ohio State looked good, but it just looked like Tennessee just had a flat tire, and then they kept trying to ride on the flat tire, and they eventually put the spare on, but they pumped the spare up too much, and the spare popped, and then, oh, my God, the car stopped.
So let's do this because we had been going for about an hour and a half. What are your thoughts on how this game plays out? Score prediction, and how you think everything goes down in Louisiana.
Well, obviously, for me, it's a double prediction because there's the one that Gunner comes out and it's like, oh my God, amazing, and there's the one where it's like, okay, we're just gonna have to manage this kid, and he is younger than me, funny enough, which this is the first starting Georgia quarterback that is younger than
you.
Yeah, this is a first for me, but you look at the guy and. I mean, he's got the tools. It is very, 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 very uncommon to have a 5-star sitting on the bench, backing up a 5-star, and then there's a 5-star behind him, and then there's another 5-star behind him. We have 4 guys that at one point a site considered a 5-star at quarterback. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the talent is definitely there. And it's not like this guy's going to be able to not make throws. The throws he's going to be able to make. It's can he see the line of scrimmage? Can he make these checks? If he can, I see Georgia winning this game comfortably because a good ticking Georgia offense, because of the guys that we just have, it's going to be hard to stop. But I don't see this game being, a boat race. I genuinely don't see it. And I, honest to God, see this more of a game that Gunner comes out and he makes some early mistakes and we're going to have to play, tongue-in-cheek football, I guess. And if that's the case, I still see Georgia winning just because of the guys that we have up front on the defensive line. I would see Georgia winning this game if I was a neutral because of the guys Georgia has on the defensive line. And I think they'll finally be able to contain, a full-thwarted running attack. And a lot of people point to the game versus Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Troy Bowles was playing versus Massachusetts, and Troy Bowles was like it was senior night. We were trying to get a lot of guys rotated in. I mean, no excuse to have a game close in the second half versus a backbreaker, I guess what you call them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we weren't there to blow them out. Like we don't care to blow out there. We much rather run experimental stuff versus these teams. And we still scored 70 almost.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we still looked pretty good. But it's gonna come down, honest to God. You want me to give my X factors? It's going to be CJ Allen. Will he make the right decisions versus Alabama last year? Alabama won that game solely off of exploiting, what decisions he's going to make. And they saw him, as an 18-year-old freshman. Now he's matured. He's grown up. Will he be able to? Because that's our running down backer. He pretty much has no assignments in the pass game. His job. And I mean, he gets paid to be at the University of Georgia to make tackles in the running game. If he has a good game, Georgia wins. If he doesn't, Georgia loses flat out. It doesn't matter what the offense does. If CJ Allen plays well, it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what happens on the other side of the ball. But I think Georgia wins. I don't think Georgia necessarily will run away with it in any circumstance. I think even if Georgia's offense is amazing, Georgia still doesn't run away with it because Georgia doesn't run away with football games. But it might feel like it gets out of hand for a little bit, even if the scoreboard doesn't say so.
All right. So my prediction for this game is I believe Notre Dame wins. I think I agree with you. I think this is going to be the ugliest game we see all weekend.
I find it funny because both fan bases adore it.
Yeah. I think this game reminds me a lot of the A&M game in terms of just A&M didn't have, that the elite playmakers on the outside. Neither did Notre Dame. A&M had a great defensive line. They tried stacking the box against us, playing press man, and we were able to have success running the ball. I believe we averaged like 6 yards a carry against A&M. And our true freshman left tackle, who was named an All-American, was putting Nick Skirton in the dirt consistently, especially in the second half. I just think that ultimately, I think I agree with what you said. I think I could see it to where Gunnar Stockton comes out, looks like the second coming of baby Jesus for Georgia, and plays an amazing game. Or he comes out and makes some crucial mistakes that Notre Dame capitalizes on. I think it's a mixture of both. And I think Notre Dame's good enough to capitalize on the turnovers and finish. If I had to give a score, I'd probably say 21-17 Notre Dame. I think it's a low-scoring game. Not a lot of offense. I think it's going to end up being a 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Bring your lunch pail, defense type game. And
the funny, like I said, both fan bases, for some reason, these are the only two fan bases that will just absolutely adore that type of game.
Yes.
We wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah.
Even Penn State, whose team is built like that, they're just, it's just a complaint factor.
Well, because I love that. I know a lot of people like the 56-52 high-flying offense games, but I like the mentality of I'm going to run it down your throat. I'm going to run it down your throat. You got to stop it. And on the defensive side of the ball, doesn't matter what you do, I'm going to come up and I'm going to smack the shit out of you every single play. I like that style of play. Those games are entertaining to me.
My favorite Georgia game that I've been to was the Clemson 10-3. Not an offensive touchdown scored.
Yeah,
because it's like a game of tug of war. Like it's a battle every single play when a game's that close. And it just keeps you just the entire time. You don't feel good about anything, and you come out. It's like, how on God's green earth did we win that? Especially this last Texas game. So many, Texas, the first half was just them getting down the field and Georgia stopping them somehow and making them kick field goals on drives that, if I was a Texas fan, I'd be upset. I feel like we gave the game away. But as a Georgia fan, it's like, man, this is like when you have hold on. Give me a second. You got to see this because I think you'll agree with me. Bend but don't break, baby.
Yeah.
It just broke. That's Georgia teams of the past. This is Georgia teams of the present. Now, Jesus, that's not a good sign. That's not a good omen. But you look and you think, man, it's like the Chiefs. It's like the Chiefs right now. It's like these guys can't find a way to lose. You know, the past 2 games, it's like Georgia had a less than 5% chance of winning both games at one point.
Yeah.
And
I do think that, you know, kind of like how, you know, you and me have talked about this multiple times. Georgia was kind of the Notre Dame, Penn State prior to when you guys finally got over the hump, where you guys were the team that everybody made fun of for choking in the big game, losing the SEC championship, like, and you finally got over the hump. And again, I think this game is to me is a pick 'em. I could see Georgia winning. I could see Notre Dame winning, and I'm sure you agree.
Yeah,
I mean, it's outside of. In the past, it was kind of like, yeah, Georgia, yeah, Alabama's probably going to beat Notre Dame pretty handily, but I think this speaks volumes to where the difference between Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame and Brian Kelly's
BK,
yeah,
Burger King's Notre Dame.
Like, even if we lose this game. Because I think it'll be a close game no matter what. I think Notre Dame will gain a lot of respect from I don't know from the pure Notre Dame haters. They'll still be there, but I mean, I just think that I just have a weird feeling that this is the time where we get our Kirby Smart Georgia moment. Not saying we win a national title, but we get that statement win to where we let everybody know, hey, we're not the old Notre Dame anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we are legit. We should be taken serious. Kind of like, was it 2017 when you guys went to the national championship?
We got to beat Notre Dame.
Yep, you guys didn't win.
We had to. I was at that game, man. That was a classic.
That was
great. Yeah, that was.
You guys didn't win the national championship, but you guys got a shit ton of respect.
Yeah,
that year.
I think. Well, I think it got more so than the brand, I guess, getting respect. They got respect that's like, hey, you can come here and be elite. Like Roquan Smith, that game turned his life around with that. Because Roquan was a good player, don't get me wrong. But Roquan was a guy that played running back in high school. You know, that game, funny enough, that game revitalized. That one football game changed the linebacker position in football forever. That made running backs want to move over and play linebacker because of Roquan Smith. Because if you're a 4'4", 4'5" guy, that's about 6'3", you know, 190 to 240 pounds, you can play linebacker. And that's what that game was about, really was. Anyway, that's a tactical analysis of a game 7 years ago. But you're right. That was the like, oh my gosh, like that was awesome. You know, we can actually do this now. And funny enough, I feel like Ohio State fans are viewing last night's game as the same thing. It's like, oh, we finally won a game in prime time. You know? Yeah. But I don't know. I could see Ohio State getting absolutely throttled on New Year's Day, and I nothing would bring more joy to my face.
The world wins when Ohio State loses.
You're absolutely right.
But
I'll be in Columbus, Ohio, the 2nd of January too. So I'm praying to God they lose and we can somehow pull it out in the Sugar Bowl. But it's a classy meetup, you know, in New Orleans again. Funny, in the least classy city on the planet. You have a team.
We need Jerome Bettis. We need Jerome Bettis and Herschel Walker to show up. Like,
Herschel will be there. Herschel's a current student. I don't know if you. Herschel.
Bettis was a student last year. He actually, funny enough, just graduated last year.
Yeah, Herschel graduated 2 weeks ago, but he's coming back for his master's, he said. But
I hope they bring back like a lot of those guys from that Notre Dame Georgia national championship.
That would be so awesome. That would be so awesome.
They need to do that. Like they seriously need
Georgia completed 2 passes in that game, which is funny enough. A lot how it might go 40 years later. But it's also, my grandfather was at was at that game, and he's going to be at this one. What is it? 44 years later, 44 years later to the day. And it's always really interesting to see, like, I wonder how many other people are going to be there 44 years later. You know what I mean? It's so awesome to watch.
It's weird because I feel like Notre Dame and Georgia, most SEC fans hate Notre Dame, but oddly enough, I feel like Georgia and Notre Dame fans
we don't care.
have a weird
we have a weird respect for each other.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like we hate Alabama. Alabama hates us. Like
I think it's because of the same. It's because of like kind of the same struggles of the 2000s. You know what I mean? Of being consistently pretty good, but never being able to get over the hump. And we shared that home and home, which was really, even though we won both of them, it was really nice.
Both games were classics. Yeah.
Both times were also like the fans loved both times, both sets of fans. You know, maybe not, traveling down to Athens and losing, but especially the fact of, you had, I mean, we rented out a page in the newspaper up there, and y'all did the same here, thanking us for like, man, like Georgia fans get a bad rep. I was like, man, this was surprisingly good. Like they actually are kind of cool about it. But I mean, we like each other. Like our fan group, our fan bases like each other, and no one else likes Georgia because in essential, we're the new Alabama type brand of the If you want to recruit that's in your state or in your area, like for example, Talon Taylor, I know Notre Dame wanted him bad when he first was, and then it's just like, why does Georgia have a guy that's just somehow specialized in recruiting suburban Chicago?
No. We also wanted Nitro Tuggle was a guy we wanted.
Yeah, from Indiana.
Indiana.
Y'all were happy when you saw him hit the portal.
Oh yeah, I don't think we'll get him, but
no, he's back. He's back. He's back at Georgia. He never entered the portal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do think that this is the game too, where if Notre Dame wins this game, you'll start getting the recruiting momentum. Like, I think Steve starts seeing 5 stars take Notre Dame seriously. Like, people will be like, oh shit, like he just beat Georgia.
Yeah,
like we can win at Notre Dame. Like that's been a big thing. And we've talked about it on my fan base. What do you got to do to get national respect? And I said, you got to beat Georgia. Like,
and for sure. And I feel like if this does change a pace for Notre Dame, this will be the game that everyone looks back at. It's like, well, that's when it happened.
But you'll still get those people that'll be like, well, Georgia had a backup quarterback.
I don't think it matters flat out. Unless Gunner comes out and literally throws 7 interceptions. Again, he can throw 3 picks. We've turned the ball over 4 times and won over and over and over and over. So, I mean, you look at this game, and a lot of folks look at this game at least and say, Georgia's got a backup quarterback. I think that makes Georgia likely to lose. I don't see it like that at all.
Yeah, I don't either.
If this were Notre Dame, on the other hand, that Riley Leonard was out, it might look a little different. Or for example,
if we didn't, I'll be honest, our offense would probably be better in the passing game because our backup can actually throw. He's not. Here's the thing with Riley. He's an elite runner. Passing leaves a lot to be desired, but his running ability makes the offense work because defenses can't get him down. And they can't focus on a running back. Our backup, though, he can sling that bitch. Like, he's been in the system for 3 years. He's like an Ian Book type. Like, he's mobile enough, but he throws beautiful balls, like accurate balls.
You really like Angeli that much?
I do, but I just don't think he's ever going to get a shot. Because CJ Carr's there, and that's already kind of been a unspoken thing. Is like CJ Carr's team next year. Like, hey, you might want to hit the portal. So that's the thing that sucks for Angeli. He's just not. He's never going to get a shot.
Is he redshirting this year?
No. He's just taking him. So he's got one more year.
Depth chart. Yeah. CJ Carr's like a Mac Jones type guy. Like doesn't like to move around can, but like will hit you on your numbers every time.
Yeah.
It can read a field well.
He throws the most beautiful deep ball I've seen a Notre Dame quarterback throw since Deshaun Kaiser. Now, Kaiser gets a bad rep for the NFL, but when he was in college,
Kaiser was good at Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, him and Will Fuller. Imagine, like I always think about it. Imagine Kaiser and Will Fuller on this year's Notre Dame team.
Yeah,
that would be fun. Like that. That's what pisses me off. And we've never had like an elite quarterback with an elite roster at the same time.
It's funny because our bet. Well, I think Carson still. Carson gets a lot of hate for interception problems that to me weren't his fault. To me, those were all more indicative of you have receivers running the wrong routes. I think 9. I think you can chalk up to literally one guy running the wrong route, which is crazy. That should never happen at a program as high level as Georgia. But you finally have a quarterback at Georgia that's like going to be, in my eyes, an NFL starter.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't have any of our good receivers. Like we had Brock last year and Ladd, which I mean, that was literally a 3-man wrecking crew of an offense. And I think you saw that over and over, like versus Auburn last year. I don't know what the national viewership was like for that game that doesn't care about the Southeastern Conference, but man, Carson Beck, Brock Bowers, and Ladd McConkey went out there and single-handedly beat Auburn. It was just awesome. And then now you look at the wide receiver room, there leaves a lot to be desired. But
I'm surprised you guys don't recruit receiver to the level of like an LSU or Alabama.
We've had a lot of turnover at wide receiver coach, more than I guess you'd see a lot of other teams have. But now we have our good recruiting guy back, James Coley. But a lot of people don't think he's a very good, actual position coach, which
he's just a recruiter.
We have a lot of guys on staff that a lot of people would say that's how they are. They're just recruiters. Like our DB coach we got from Southern California. Again, a lot to be desired from that room early on. He's our cornerbacks coach.
Yeah.
Not DBs. Kirby.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did is we had a guy in Chancey Stuckey for a while who was elite in recruiting. Like we got, Jaden Greathouse from Texas. Who Texas really wanted. We were able to get a couple top 100 kids. Like he was lead at recruiting, but he was just a terrible on-field coach. Like he did not. The receivers, it was so bad. Our receivers went to Freeman and said, "Hey, this guy just doesn't know what he's doing."
Yeah, it's never been that bad at Georgia, but I mean, there's been a lot of anger from within. Like I know a lot of players are very unhappy with our offensive coaching. I'm not going to out any names, but there's a lot of players that are very unhappy, playing. Mike Bobo is. I'm sure you've heard that name being on the message boards. Believe it or not, I quite like Mike Bobo as an offensive coordinator. He's an Athens area guy. He was quarterback here. His play calling's gotten a lot better since he got back at the beginning of last year. But as the guy that, offensive coaches report to him, and as a quarterback coach, I think there was a lot left to be desired from him. Not necessarily as a play caller. Most people have qualms with him as a play caller. I have qualms with him as a quarterback coach because Carson, still great to me, has regressed significantly from last year. I mean, last year he was just like, oh my God, good. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, now we have a receivers coach that's more of a developmental guy. He was with Freeman at Cincinnati with Alec Pierce, who is now he's like pretty good ass receiver for the Colts.
Yeah, I like Alec Pierce.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, we have the recruits. Can this guy develop them? It sucks because Riley's not a quarterback that's necessarily receiver development friendly, but I think we'll see what we got at receiver next year with CJ Carr because he'll actually air it out.
I just find it funny that our best quarterback probably of all time is a guy that, well, not of all time. Aaron Murray's our best quarterback of all time. I don't know if you watched Georgia games in that time.
Yep,
period,
I did.
But watching a 5'8", 1-star, 2-star walk-on just transform an offense because he's a 3-level guy was just one of the most interesting things, especially because in 2020 Stetson was just not good. He could air the ball out, but he had a serious interception problem. Not like Beck's. Like Beck makes the right read and will either miss the throw or the receiver runs around right. Like, no, he's just completely not seeing the field. And then he just gets sacked all the time and get balls swatted down because he's 5'8". To the next year or the next 2 years, like setting a Georgia first place Heisman voting record. There were less Heisman voters back in the day. Herschel won it, but had a lot less votes. But just that turnaround from him of Todd Monken, which Todd Monken had a headset on during the SEC championship. But Todd Monken hates college football. He hates recruiting. He didn't want to recruit. I mean, I feel like you look at Georgia's QB room now, there's no guy that was in between besides Carson, which was recruited by believe it or not, James Coley recruited Carson back, who's now back as our wide receiver coach. But that's the only tweener. Like Monken only recruited Gunnar Stockton, and then Pug and Rashada were Bobo recruits. And you look at that one recruit in 3 years at quarterback is kind of insane.
Yeah.
But we haven't had anyone leave the program quarterback, which to me is insane.
Well, besides Brock, which
I don't
know. I don't know how Brock was a 5-star. I'm sorry.
Me and Brock grew up together. Funny enough, if you had saw him play in high school,
I would have understood it.
But I mean, I think if he would have stayed at Oklahoma, stayed committed to Oklahoma. Funny enough, I think with the situation that they had, Brandon Aubrey just made a 58-yard field goal look like it was nothing. That's insane. If he would have stayed at Oklahoma with the situation they had with Rattler and Williams, funny enough, Caleb Williams might not have ever got a shot and left, which I know that's crazy to say, but because of his stature, he probably would have been above Williams. And I mean, in that type of offense but in the Kentucky offense, I mean, my God, that's like trying to fit a square puzzle piece into like an electrical outlet and expecting it to fit and hold something up. Like he retired from football. Vandergrift the other day. Yeah, the other day he retired from football.
That's why they're trying to get Malik Murphy. Huh? Makes sense.
He committed. Didn't he, Malik Murphy? I think he committed.
Did he commit to Kentucky?
No, he went somewhere else.
Oh, okay. I know they had him in for a visit.
Oregon State.
That just
doesn't make sense, does it?
Duke for Oregon State when you just went 9-3.
Duke showed him the door for some reason because he did something in a meeting. Is the word that we had about it. Also, both of the Georgia Tech receivers that entered the portal are back at Georgia Tech.
So, Singleton's back.
Well, because he blew all of his. He wanted so much money, no one was willing to give it to him, and kind of blew his shot.
Shit, he could have came to Notre Dame, man.
Dude, we didn't want to pay him. He wanted to go to Ole Miss. Okay. He's from Mississippi, but grew up in Atlanta, the Atlanta area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think State was his team growing up. He wanted to go to Ole Miss, and then he got in 2 meetings with Ole Miss. The first one went well. The second one apparently blew him off. And then he went to Georgia, and the same thing happened. And then he went to Auburn, which Auburn gave him 2 visits, which you don't see that out of a transfer. Like, you don't see a team give 2 OVs in the transfer portal. And apparently the second meeting went so bad that he took his name out of the portal. It was like, Georgia Tech's not that bad. I mean, I don't understand how that guy was number 1 in the portal at all. Rutherford, his teammate that just entered the portal 2 days ago, was to me the much better receiver on film. And statistically, and versus Georgia every year, and I don't know. We see a lot of the same guys. We recruit a lot of the same guys.
Did Jamal Haynes enter?
No, he's staying.
Okay. Surprised he didn't get any NIL offers to enter.
He's
we know that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that's going on.
Oh yeah, well, like let's be honest here. to be up here and be like, there's no tampering in college football. It's like, it's pretty naive. Like,
that's
but yeah. Hey man, I appreciate you coming on here, talking the game. It was nice.
Yeah, man. A lot of fun. I hope it's a good
game.
I hope it's a good game. Yeah, I'll be there. So
hey, may the best team win, man. May the best team win.
Exactly that.
And hopefully,
good talking to you, Ryan.
Yeah, you too, man. Hopefully, whoever wins the natty. Like, because I would prefer to lose to the team that wins the natty. Yeah, then
likewise.
Yeah. But all right, man. You take care. You guys have a
good dogs.
All right, peace.
See you, man.
All right, guys. That has been another episode of the Week Zero Podcast. We went a little bit way longer than we usually go. Appreciate all 157 of you tuning in tonight. If you can, I know most of you are on Twitter. Go over to Week Zero Productions. That's Week Zero Productions on YouTube. Drop a sub, drop a like. Trying to get to 1,000 before the end of the season. So go do that, please. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday